For the Young at Heart is sponsored by Duville Life and Wellness Community, a commitment to care, a legacy of compassion. This is Duville.
Hello, welcome to For the Young at Heart. I'm Lucille Jerome, and on today's program we're going to be taking another look at the Lowell Folk Festival. We did this last year, but this year we're going to be focusing on the ethnic foods and the cultural participation and the wide variety of things going on other than the music, which is what we focused on last year. I have two guests with me today. Joanne Marcus, who's been on before, and she is a volunteer coordinator for the Lowell Folk Festival. And we also have Millie Ron, who is the folklorist for the Lowell Folk Festival. Thank you. Thank you both for coming today.
So welcome. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah,
the Folk Festival is just a few weeks away. We're getting excited about it.
Yeah.
And I know last year we did talk about the music and talked about volunteering. I am the coordinator for the Lowell Folk Festival, bringing in hundreds of volunteers because that's the only way we can get it done.
Right.
All the work. We have lots of ethnic food vendors coming this year. We've actually expanded our food service to include Market Street. So we have like 4 new vendors who are coming to service us, and we're kind of excited that this is going to happen.
Right.
But this year I want to talk a little bit about our craft area and our foodways that happen on Lucy Larkin Parkway, which is really an interesting part of the Lowell Folk Festival. So Millie is here to talk about that area.
Great. I'm so glad. Sure.
Thank you. I'm a folklorist in the region, and I have been working on the festival now. I think this is my 25th year, and I do the traditional folk life area, which is the food traditions and craft traditions. And we are in Lucy Larkin Park. The festival is all weekend, but we are there Saturday and Sunday from noon to 5 p.m.
Okay.
And what we're doing in the food ways, and this is different from the ethnic food vendors, that is food for sale. This is food where we give free samples, and everybody likes free food. This year our theme is flatbreads. And basically flatbreads are in almost every culture, and it's very simple, there's no yeast, and sometimes they're stuffed, or they're wrapped, or they're simply buttered, or something sweet or savory. And we have demonstrations every hour starting at noon till 4 p.m., and we have a different tradition each hour. So we have Lithuanian pancakes. This is a cook who is from Lithuania. She's been here a couple times before, and people just love her. She's very funny. She turned out to be our star cook a couple years ago, and everybody wants her back. Her name is Irena Malasauskas. And then we have a Franco cook doing crepes. Of course, how can we not have Franco in this area? And how can we not have Greek? We have Elena Zodi from Lowell. And then we have Asian Indian, naan, the flatbread. And I have one slot that just opened up today, so I'm looking for a 5th cook.
Oh, okay. Do you have any ideas in mind?
I don't. I mean, we have such a wealth of traditions here, and
I mean, this is an immigrant city.
Right. And I love to talk about Lowell as an immigrant city because to me it's the American experience. And we have foodways from all sorts of traditions. So I am considering a Haitian cook because it would be really nice, the old compare and contrast. The Franco, much longer settled Franco tradition, and then the French influences on Haiti. I just did a program in New Bedford the other night, and I met some Haitian cooks. So we'll see.
Okay.
So come and the nice thing is we talk about people's backgrounds. I start with, why are you sitting here in Lowell today? Where did your people come from? When did they come? What did they do?
Right.
What do you still cook at home? These are home cooks. These are not professionals. And this is, what do you feed your family? And is it an everyday meal? Is it a special occasion? And then, after they do the demonstration, then we give samples to the audience.
Okay. And every hour you have a different.
Yes. And it's the same hour.
Okay.
Noon, Saturday, and Sunday are the same cook.
Okay. Good. So that minimizes confusion from people who might want to go for the Lithuanian, for example.
Right.
And then roam around to some other place and then come back for something else.
And once we have the final schedule, it will be on the festival website.
Okay. All right then. The festival starts Friday night though at 6.
Yeah,
And
so-
ends Sunday at 6. But
Yeah.
the folklorist is basically Saturday and Sunday.
Correct.
Okay.
In the
Okay.
afternoon.
In the afternoon.
Yeah.
And we're
Okay.
right in Lucy Larkin Park, right along the canal. We have trees. It's a nice place for people to sit down, and we have the foodways area. We call it foodways because it's not just the demonstration of a recipe, but it's how it's handed down in families.
Right.
Do you have certain pots or pans that you cook with? Sometimes our cooks bring tablecloths. It's all about the utensils and the traditions and the stories, because where do people talk about their family stories? It's in the kitchen or the table.
That's right.
And
Okay.
then we also have traditional craft.
Yes, I do remember the craft. Now, you have different crafts every year.
We
though.
do,
Right.
we do. And
Okay.
I work on this with my colleague Maggie Holtzberg, who is the state folklorist at the Massachusetts Cultural Council. And she was actually based at Lowell for a few years, so a lot of people know her. And she has worked with, we call them tradition bearers, all across Massachusetts. And we have quite an array this year. We also have people from Maine and New Hampshire and Rhode Island. How did I forget? Little Rhodey. So our theme this year is a very complicated name, which we will never do again.
Okay.
It is painted, platted, pounded, or pulled, the poor peas. And we have an ornamental blacksmith. We have a Trinidadian steel pan, steel drum maker. With the music theme, we also have a Micmac Indian flute maker.
Okay.
We have a Zimbabwean, the little thumb piano that they,
Yes.
it's called a marimba, imbira, I'm sorry, imbira. And then we have several liturgical painters, both church painting images and icons that are used in many different religious traditions. We have Norwegian rose mauling, which is painting on wood, which is a very old, things like lunch boxes
Right.
and planters and small wooden objects. And we have a woman doing hooked rugs, because
my
we
gosh.
always try, whatever our theme is, we try to tie in Lowell themes.
Right.
So
right.
hooked rugs, textiles.
Braided rugs. I remember braided rugs.
We have had braided rugs, yes. In fact, a couple years ago, we had, they call themselves the hookers, from Cape Cod.
Okay.
And they came up.
Yeah. We don't have to have our audience block their ears.
No. Said very lovingly.
Yes. But the braided rugs would be made from scraps from woolens from the mills.
That's correct.
That's what I remember.
That's
Okay.
correct.
How many years have you been doing this?
I've been doing it for about 25 years.
Okay, so you came here and started 25
Yeah,
years.
this is the 32nd festival.
It is.
32nd festival,
All right.
which is a tradition in itself and
right.
one that we are all proud to maintain.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
So we want to introduce and get people in the audience to understand that we have live music that's happening at 5 different stages. We have 5 different locations for ethnic food that they can come and sample food, purchase very affordable meals. Okay, but we have this incredible opportunity to really talk to people who actually do these crafts. So they're going to demonstrate their crafts, but you're able to talk with them and
Right.
understand exactly how they do it, how they got into it. Many of them, it's traditional, so it's actually passed down from generation to generation. And it's really a learning experience, especially with the food way.
Yes.
It's really their culture.
Yeah.
And many people can relate to learning someone else's culture because they've actually grown up with certain foods that
Right.
their family is traditional. to
That's
make.
right. The thing about learning from different cultures and the similarities, flatbread.
I
just
like to
done
say,
differently.
when you eat other people's food or you listen to their music, you realize we have more in common than we
Right.
don't.
Exactly.
You might eat potatoes and somebody else eats rice and somebody else eats something else, but it's still the starch. Every culture has strings and woodwinds and
Right.
percussion.
Right.
And the nice thing is our area is very family friendly, and not only do you have the opportunity to talk to the traditional artisans, but in some cases you'll even be able to try your hand at weaving black ash baskets or finish birch bark baskets or hooking a rug, so that we
I
really,
like that idea
Yes.
because they're not just observing anymore. Now they're participating.
And these are people that, they're your neighbors and your friends. And as I say, they're from all across Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island. And you don't see these people or these traditions generally unless you're in the area. And it's interesting you mention how people got into this. For instance,
yeah.
Carl Close is a ornamental blacksmith. He's been at the festival before, but not for quite a while. He used to have a studio here in Lowell, and he comes from a farm on the North Shore. And in the old days, farmers had to be able to do everything. They had to be vets to take care of their animals. They needed to fix something on their machines. They had to be able to do it. So Carl comes from it quite in the tradition.
Right.
And
Right.
we look at traditional artists as people who have learned from their family or their community, not necessarily something you go learn at school or you learn on your own from a book or from a video or things like that. So that you're getting, whether it's formal or not, you're getting an apprenticeship, and then you become a master at it.
Okay. I like that. The concept is great. So someone might want to meet the blacksmith and talk to him and say, gee, I think I might want to learn about this. The same thing with the hooked rugs. They might want to learn about not just observing it, not just participating there at the festival, but maybe something is awakened in them and they want to learn again from an artisan.
And that's a good point, because several of them, including the blacksmith and the rug hooker in particular, they have studios, they do classes, and for somebody who's really, really interested and wants to perhaps become their own master at whatever the tradition is, there's actually funding available from certainly Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island to work with one of these, what we call them master artists, and then learn so that you can pass it on to the next generation.
It is a generational thing.
Absolutely.
Generational.
And sometimes it's more domestic arts, sometimes it's more occupational. We have, I look at musicians as occupational. And this year, for instance, we have the steel drums from Trinidad and the mbira from Zimbabwe and the Micmac Indian flutes. Well, this has happened before, and I am almost can assure you it's going to happen again. They're going to start jamming. So you can imagine a flute, a traditional flute, the little thumb piano, the steel pans, and actually the pan maker, he comes from a family that was very renowned in Trinidad for making their steel pans. He's bringing two of his sons. So, and we have some other family members that are coming, and that's when my heart just
Right,
goes
right,
pitter patter, and that happens on the foodway stage too. We have parents and children, or grandparents. And
Family member generation to the next generation. to the
Absolutely.
next. Right,
Yeah.
right. And
I find that this particular program is so interesting
Right.
because you get to talk to the artist and the
Yeah.
person creating the food.
Yeah.
And these are people that you could go to their home and this is what they would feed
This
you
is
in
what
their
they would
home.
have.
So it's
Yeah.
not like you're going to a restaurant, you're learning how they make the food,
Right.
they're sampling it, you can ask questions, you sometimes even get the recipe, okay? On
will
the
they
food.
share the recipe? Now, some families, the recipe's a secret.
That's right. That's right. Most of the time, people do share it, and what we do is we hand out printed copies, and then we
Okay.
put them on the website
Okay.
if we have them.
Yeah.
But you're right that some recipes are a secret. And usually when the cooks come and they'll put their array, we have a little makeshift kitchen, and they'll have, whatever they're using, and I'll say to them, where did you get that? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is Market Basket, because mostly our cooks are from the Merrimack Valley.
Sure.
But sometimes they go to a specialty store and get Indian spices or Spanish spices or something like that. So that's important to know. And then they can say where they got it. And a lot of times people say, well, I grow my own. I grow my own herbs. The Lithuanian pancake maker has come and done pickles in the past. And she grows her own pickles, her own cucumbers, and
Right,
pickles
right.
them. So, and
Because that's important too, because the spices you use, the taste might differ depending on where you're getting them from or from your own garden.
that's correct.
Okay. So is the recipe, let's say they share a recipe, they might specify just where they bought a particular spice, for example, and that would definitely help
Yes.
someone wanting to do the recipe. Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. You've got this down pat.
Well, it's interesting, and because I really believe in cooking your own food, trying to be as authentic as possible, but also as healthy as possible.
Sure.
And we've talked about that in previous years, where it's not that hard to cook, and you don't have to be fancy, and looking back at your own tradition. So maybe, let's look at Greek, for instance, because I know working with Greek cooks over the years, these recipes were for mill workers or farmers who were doing a lot of physical work. So you needed sugar, you needed salt, you needed butter, or
Lard or something.
Lard, something.
Yeah.
Well, most of us aren't doing that anymore.
Right, right.
So how do you adapt? Or you have health issues that you need to address. How do you adapt your tradition without losing the tradition? When does spanakopita become so de-Greekified, if that's a word, that it's just some sort of mush? Well, I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows, there are certain things that you have to have.
Right, right,
You don't
right,
put Swedish meatballs in it, for instance, because you like Swedish meatballs.
Right.
And that is true. And I've tried to alter one of our family traditions.
Uh-oh.
And it's actually a cookie, a galette that I make for my family. And because I use Crisco, and I said, oh, that's probably not that healthy. But I haven't found anything to substitute. So I just make it, and I just say, well, it's not that bad for you.
Well,
you don't have it every day.
That's
it's like
right.
One of those,
It's a
family-
treat.
It's a treat,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
In my house, we say it's good for your coat. 'Cause I-
Okay.
But it's interesting,
Yeah.
Joanne, because I know that you are French from Lowell, and lard is coming back because
That's
Crisco.
I hear that, yes.
And I was doing a program in another town just last week, and I was talking to this Portuguese woman,
Lard.
and she said, lard, you can buy it in Market Basket or any other grocery store. And
We were told that wasn't good for us.
it's not good for us, but on the other hand, if you use the real deal instead of, I stopped using Crisco ages ago because, the old thing, if you can't pronounce the ingredients, you probably shouldn't be eating them. Not that lard is great,
Right.
but it's not as processed.
Right. Right.
So you don't use a lot of it. use real butter, but not a lot of it. Use real sugar, but not,
Not a lot of it. Right. So,
So-
going back to the traditional ingredients.
Because remember, everybody ate organic food
That's
when
right.
they were growing the food here in Drake for the mill workers in Lowell and elsewhere. Nobody had chemicals until, the middle of the 20th century.
I remember shelling peas for my grandmother, sitting on the back steps of the little farm that they had.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Lawrence-Methuen area, and they had a farm in Pleasant Valley, Methuen. And I remember shelling peas for them. I remember picking blackberries from a bush. It must have been I was short and tiny and little, so it might have been a tree. I don't know for sure, but I remember doing those kinds of things for them. Same thing with picking the green beans.
And all of those can be rolled up in flatbreads.
Oh,
you can
there
have
you go.
You can have your vegetables in a flatbread, and you can have
Yeah,
your berries
There
as
you
the
go.
dessert.
Right. Okay.
How would you like to come and cook on our stage?
Oh my heavens! Oh boy! I don't think you want me to do that.
Oh, you'd be surprised. You'd be
Oh
surprised.
gosh! But you've very passionate, just as you are, very passionate about what you do.
The
It
Folk Festival
shows.
is just wonderful. There's something for everyone.
Right.
We have a children's section. We have, the ethnic food is just wonderful. The people who are cooking the food, they're all volunteers. They really have a passion for it.
Right.
The
Right.
foodways and all the crafts are so wonderful. You can talk to the artists. There's
Yeah.
the music. It's all traditional music. People who have
Yeah.
learned from generations to generations. There's actually in the downtown area, Discovery, you can talk to all the different vendors in the area, all the different artists who have tables, you can talk with them. We have also, there is actually an area right next to the Visitors Center where you can actually buy crafts and buy the local artists who are selling their
artists,
wares
right.
there. So there's a little bit of everything for everyone.
Right. I'm glad we're talking about the range of what's available, because I think some people come for just the music, not realizing the wide range of what's going on. Like you mentioned, children's activity.
Oh, we have lots
Okay,
and lots
yeah,
of
right,
children's
exactly.
activities.
Okay, and the foodways, which is separate from the vendors selling food. What vendors are you having this year, by the way? Do you know?
I do not know all of them, but I will say one of the things that is unique about the Lowell Festival, not just because I love it and work on it, but it's people come as much for the food as they do for the music,
Okay, good.
because we have all these ethnic vendors from local religious organizations or scouts or something. I know that, there's always Filipinos. They are always the number one to sell out. Greek, Armenian, Brazilian,
Polish.
Polish. Oh yes, I can't forget
Polish,
those.
okay.
Yes,
And they are all local organizations, and so you're supporting them. They're
Right.
supporting the festival. I
Right.
know from having done some similar programs like this that there is something like $100,000 that is put back into the Lowell, the regional economy,
Right.
from these organizations that are selling the food, buying their ingredients. So the festival is more than just that weekend. And then of course, people are coming, they're buying crafts. The crafts people in my area, in the Folklife area, they do not sell anything, but they have cards, many of them have websites.
Okay.
And the thing is, you're probably not going to buy a very expensive ornamental piece of ironwork on a whim, but you know who to go to
Right, exactly.
when you want it, or
Exactly.
a basket.
Yeah.
And so they are not selling things. And the artistry that is for sale are more like jewelry and cards
They're
and
cards,
and
things
different-
like that.
but still,
paintings.
yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned the Micmac.
Yes.
They're going to be one of the foodways, right?
Yes. And
Will
this-
they also have crafts?
Well, no. He's not doing foodways.
Oh, okay.
He's just doing the flutes.
He's just-
But what's
Oh,
interesting,
okay.
his name is David Sanapass, and he comes from, most of Micmacs are up on the Canadian border in New Brunswick, because most of them come from New Brunswick.
Sure.
He actually lives in southern Maine, but his family, the Sanapass family, are very well known for making their baskets, and his parents were, his father's not around, but his father was known for their laundry baskets. And you go into houses in northern Maine, whether they're Indian or not, and they have these Micmac baskets.
Okay.
And
yeah.
David is, I don't know how old he is, he's probably in his 50s, say. But his uncle, Wilfred Sanapass, was at one of the very first Lowell Folk Festivals doing woodworking.
Oh my God.
So, and you know, basketry
Right.
and the flutes are about going into the woods, getting it's usually ash. The flutes use a couple other woods, but it's chopping down the tree, preparing the wood, pounding it so that you get the strips to work with, whether it's for baskets or carving the flutes and things like that.
How important it is that there's this tradition that's continuing, that there's still a love for the tradition, you know, so that when these guys are gone, if there's not someone to keep it up, we're not going to know anymore.
That's
We
right.
won't know
That's
anymore.
exactly right.
You know?
And we have, for instance, we have a couple from Ashley Falls out in western Massachusetts, Joanne and Steve Katzos, and they are doing black ash basket making. And Joanne makes the baskets. Steve goes out into the woods and processes. It's not a native basket tradition.
Okay.
But it is certainly a very important tradition. We also have a Finnish basket maker, also from the western part of the state. She does birch bark, and that's, you know, taking the bark off the tree, or where with the ash tree, because I've done a lot of field work in the woods, particularly with Indians in Maine,
Oh,
and going
okay.
into the woods. And
So you're not just, no, listen to how I was going to say that, you're not just a folklorist, you have also made many things.
well, I myself have not, but what I have made
But
is the
you've gone into the woods.
documentation.
Okay.
And a lot of
okay.
it's on videos, and
All right.
to show, I mean, I just wrote a guest blog for the Massachusetts Cultural Council called These Festival Moments. And I had 3 in Lowell, which one was 15 years ago. We had an Abenaki basket maker
Okay,
come.
yep, yep.
He came Saturday morning. He had this huge log that he was pounding, because you pound it and you get the strips. By Sunday afternoon, the log was like this. And I
He
overheard
started.
these 2 women
Yeah.
say, now I understand why baskets are so expensive.
Right,
and so much
right.
work."
There
And
you
it's kind of
go.
like, these are the
Yeah.
moments that we
Yeah.
folklorists
Sure,
live for,
Sure.
because
Ah.
we want to educate.
sure.
And the same with, many people know Sally Palmer Field from Chelmsford,
Sure.
who was a quilt maker.
Now, you know, we're actually winding down. We're actually winding down right now. I'm just so pleased that you've been able to come and share this passion with our audience, and to share this coming up just a few weeks from now. Just
And
a few weeks from now.
Now they can come and
Yes,
share with
and
us,
share.
because
Yes.
this is a regional story.
That's right. It
And
is.
whether people are from the traditions we're featuring, go home and look at your own recipes and your family stories. And do you knit? Do you whittle? Do you do this or
Crochet.
that?
Yes.
All of this.
Yes,
I mean,
okay.
you know, we all have culture.
That's
we
right.
are all tradition bearers.
And during the weekend, all age groups,
All
from
age
infant
groups.
to
Yes.
elderly, and it's visitor friendly. And thank you both for coming
Oh, thank
and
you.
sharing your knowledge
Thank you for the
and fun
opportunity.
and your passion. I love passion. I love passion. I do.
All right, so we're excited. It's going to be starting very shortly.
Yeah.
Go to the website.
For the Young at Heart is sponsored by Duville Life and Wellness Community, a commitment to care, a legacy of compassion. This is Duville.